We've never seen anything like this in the history of our country. And I have deep concerns that big tech hasn't gotten the memo yet. There's some signs that maybe they're embracing free speech once again, but the abuses of government, I think, in working with those big tech companies to collude and coerce those companies will go down as some of the worst First Amendment violations in the history of the United States of America. Do I have your commitment to work with me if we see those kinds of abuses again?
Yes, Senator.
Thank you. I want to ask you a little bit, sort of in that vein, that antitrust law makes it a crime for companies to band together and set rates, a practice known, of course, as price fixing. Would you agree that if, let's say, a group of advertisers colluded in a campaign to fix a price at, say, 0, as in boycott a specific conservative news site, that practice would be illegal under antitrust law?
Well, Senator, same as with everyone else, you're asking me a hypothetical, but if I could ground it in what we've seen in terms of reporting and facts and evidence from the GARM report. Mm-hmm. So this was a report that came out of the House Judiciary Committee last summer. And so what was evidence there was a pattern of conduct involving a trade association, which for and on behalf of national brands and international brands selectively stopped advertising dollars or counseled companies not to send advertising dollars to certain companies. And the reason that was important is because the brands involved account for about 90% of ad spend domestically. It's a big number. And I think it's fair to say a certain amount of collusion went on via this trade association. And I think that pattern of conduct is quite troubling, and that's what the House report concluded. So I can share that with you because it's not a hypothetical.
Yeah, sadly, my question actually wasn't a hypothetical, sadly speaking.
Okay.
But thank you for your answer. I do want to visit with you just a little bit, Mr. Blanche. Good to see you again. This isn't the first time we met.
It is not.
We met in a New York courtroom.
We did.
In the spring.
Yes, we did.
And
he wasn't a client.
I was not a client.
Sorry.
I was there to witness a true perversion of our legal system. Books I'm sure will be written about this, but the coordinated effort, by the way, between the White House and the Department of Justice and even local prosecutors to jail their chief political opponent is I think will go down as one of the great abuses and a stain on Merrick Garland's record forever and Joe Biden's record forever. Let's have the debate. Let's have an election. And I think the American people weighed in their own jury box and delivered their verdict that they didn't want to see us become a banana republic. But you were front and center in all that. And I want to just give you the opportunity, and maybe one more question after that, but an opportunity to, what did you see? I mean, you were in the front row for this. I mean, you're arguing. I saw some of the objections that were being made that were overruled, and it was just a circus. But what did you take from that whole experience? And how can you use that then to make sure this never happens again?
It's a great question, and I think about that question a lot. I think my take from the whole experience is how powerful law enforcement really is at the state and federal level, and how much responsibility we have as prosecutors to make sure that we don't use that power in a way that is really it's corrupt. It becomes corrupt. I mean, there's examples that I could speak about all day, but when you have, for example, a judge knowing there's another trial scheduled on the same day with the same defendant, refused to even discuss moving that trial date, knowing that the defendant, in this case, President Trump, would have to prepare for 2 separate criminal trials at the same time that he's on trial across the street in a case brought by the Attorney General of New York to try to destroy his business. That's power. And that's power that's corrupted. And so what I take from that is not that we don't have a lot of power, we do. But what I take from that is that we have to do, when we are prosecuting cases, civil or criminal, we have to simply do the right thing. It can't be because of politics. It can't be because you don't like something President Trump said. It can't be because you ran on a campaign
Yeah.
that said that I'm going to go after President Trump, that you should elect me because I'm the only one that's successfully gone after him before.
Well, and I agree, as a former prosecutor myself, the restraint that you need to have is really important. And that was completely lost in this. And Jack Smith is perhaps the worst offender, known as overcharging, known as somebody that is a henchman and was picked specifically to go do the bidding here, was disgusting. And one of the worst abusers, and he can't be sort of on the Mount Rushmore of the lawfare disaster that we saw, Matthew Colangelo. And I just want you to comment on this, and I'm going to ask you a quick question. He left his position, you're coming in as a number 2, left his position as the number 3 person at DOJ to go where? To go prosecute a state law on a bookkeeping error in New York. Now, why would he do that? Why would he do that? It's clearly a step down from the role that he had at the Department of Justice. I mean, I think, again, it's all part of this coordinated effort from lawfare. He was number 3 at DOJ, goes to New York to help prosecute this ridiculous case. And I know I'm out of time, so I'm just going to ask you, will you commit to not leave your post to take a low-level prosecutor position that would allow you to prosecute a political opponent?
I so commit.
All right. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir.
With that, on behalf of the chair, Senator Hirono.
Thank you. I asked the following 2 initial questions of all nominees who come before any of my committees. So I'll start with you and then go to Ms. Slater. Since you became a legal adult, have you ever made unwanted requests for sexual favors or committed any verbal or physical harassment or assault of a sexual nature?
No, Senator.
Slater?
No, Senator.
Have you ever faced discipline or entered into a settlement relating to this kind of conduct?
No, Senator.
Mr. Blanche, the Deputy Attorney General oversees the FBI, the Criminal Division, the National Security Division, and the management of the department. Generally, that's a lot. And there's been enormous upheaval, I hope you recognize that, at the department and FBI in recent weeks. Last week, at DOJ's request, the FBI provided the DOJ a list of over 5,000 names of those who worked on January 6 matters. Why do you think the DOJ asked for this information?
Well, Senator, I wasn't part of the decision that was made to ask for the information, but I've read about it like you have.
You think that it should be a routine kind of thing to ask this kind of information? Under your watch, would this kind of thing keep happening?
It depends on why the information was requested.
Yeah, that's why I'm asking you. Why do you think? It had a chilling effect, don't you think? It led to a lot of uncertainty and people being very concerned about their names being released. So you were asked some questions along those lines. You don't know. But once you do get confirmed, you're going to end up with all these names, not just the FBI, but you're going to have DOJ people whose names you will have. What do you intend to do with all of that?
I believe that President Trump was crystal clear that he, in an executive order, that he expected the Department of Justice to investigate what happened over the past several years with a goal of making sure it never happens again. Not with releasing names, not to somehow do damage to the agents or their families or prosecutors.
So are you, excuse me, my question is, what are you going to do with all these names? So are you then going to start investigating these investigators? Is that what's going to start happening with the thousands of names that you will be provided when you are confirmed, as I think you will?
We will.
Probably.
We will investigate what happened and why it happened, and certainly understanding the number of agents involved, why they were ordered to do what they did, why they did what they did, is part of our job as.
So instead of the FBI protecting our country, protecting all of its citizens, you are turning your attention to what's going on within your soon-to-be own department. Okay. In the past few weeks, dozens of non-political career officials in the Criminal Division, National Security Division, and elsewhere have been demoted or reassigned to areas outside their expertise. And in fact, you said that the DOJ is doing that. Why would the department want to purge these experienced non-political expert prosecutors?
I'm not there, Senator. I don't think it's a purge, from what I've read.
Well, when you get there, will you reverse these moves and return these expert prosecutors to their areas of expertise, if confirmed?
I am not going to commit to any decision that will be made before consulting with the folks that are there already.
So there are already all these people, hundreds of agents. It's not, the DOJ consists of thousands of investigators and prosecutors, and many of them are being shifted to doing other things. One can only survive, and I certainly do, that there's a reason for the names being disclosed, well, not disclosed, but being provided, and the fact that so many career people are being sent off to do other things, rather than, in my view, protecting the American public from lawbreakers. That includes white-collar crime, by the way. You know, we know that that violent crime is going down, and yet the Department of Justice is going to be turning its attention away from white-collar crime and all the ways that the people in our country are being defrauded and taken to the cleaners. What kind of prosecution is going to occur there? So, you know what, not content with gutting the FBI and DOJ, from what I can see of experienced non-political leaders, the Trump administration has also halted all hiring at DOJ. It's not just DOJ, but across the board, freeze. And there are a lot of people across all of our departments, people who are on probation, and already those people on probation in the SBA that help small businesses have already been fired, several hundred of them. And so what's going to happen when you take over? Are all of these people who are on probation in the Department of Justice going to be fired? And then they will not be replaced because there will be a hiring freeze. Is that what's going to be happening under your watch, Mr. Blanche?
I don't know, but if they're on probation, I don't believe it's actually even a firing. I mean, but I don't know what's going to happen. I'm not there.
Well, people on probation have already been fired in the SBA, and you have a lot of people on probation in the Justice Department. Let me just turn to one area that I am concerned about. You talk about the criminal, going after criminals. Well, there is a criminal division section, DOJ's child exploitation and obscenity section, that protects children by prosecuting those who create, distribute, and post child sexual abuse material. I think everybody on this committee, regardless of politics, agrees on the need to protect kids. But this section, like the rest of the DOJ, is subject to a hiring freeze and has probationary employees who likely will be fired. Mr. Blanche, can you think of any reason to reduce the number of prosecutors in the DOJ's child exploitation and obscenity section?
Virtually every prosecution in that area is done by U.S. attorneys' offices, by assistant U.S. attorneys' offices in the 94 offices. So I personally prosecuted those cases, as did people that worked with me. So I am very confident that the law is protecting our children.
So you
are being
will
enforced.
make sure that this section of the DOJ will have the full complement of investigators and prosecutors. Is that what you're testifying to?
I don't know what full complement means, but I can tell you
Well,
that
all
the
you have to
safety
do
of our
is
children
check
will.
what the numbers are here before the hiring freeze and before the people who are on probation get let go, because this is an area of prosecution and investigation that needs to happen. You testified. Okay. You testified that you will follow the law, that there is no place for politics in the DOJ. The thing is, though, we have a president who thinks that the DOJ is his law firm and that all the lawyers in the DOJ are his lawyers. And so when you sit here and testify that you don't think he's going to ask any of you to do anything illegal, that pretty much defies belief. Because in the 26 executive orders that he issued on the day one of his, I have to say, regime, a lot of those are being challenged as being illegal. And some of them, I would say, are illegal on their face. We expect the Attorney General to say, you shouldn't issue this, like the one where he tried to prevent the, he tried to stop money that had already been appropriated by Congress. There's a law that prevents the president from doing that, and yet the DOJ let him issue this executive order. So when you sit here and say, all of you testify that you will follow the law, again, it's the law as President Trump sees it. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
I mean, I do not agree with what you just said, Senator, respectfully.
Well, on behalf of the chair, Mr. Blanche, I will give you a moment to, the senator's out of time, but I'll give you a moment to explain why.
Thank you. This idea, the senator referred to the president of the United States as being part of regime. That's absolutely not true. He's the duly elected president of the United States. He has tremendous amount of power given to him by not by me, but by the American people. And so to the extent that I say I will follow the law and that I have confidence that President Trump will never ask me to do something illegal or in violation of the law, it's, again, based upon my experience with him and my respect for the office of which he resides.
Thank you. Now, on behalf of the chair, I recognize Senator Tillis. Well, that's me. My turn. Mr. Blanche, I'm going to come to you for the bulk of my 7 minutes, but I actually would like to start with Ms. Slater. Ms. Slater, I've heard from countless stakeholders in the final days of the Biden administration. Politically motivated cases were tracked by the DOJ and actions not taken because they were proper or necessary for the pursuit of justice. It's my staff words. I've got something else here. I feel like the Biden administration and the Antitrust Division was trying to get some work done out the door. Can I get your commitment that we can look at whether or not there was political kind of getting the last things in and see if any of the decisions that were taken were appropriate? When you're confirmed, I'll be supporting your confirmation.
Thank you, Senator. With regards to all cases within the Antitrust Division, I commit to taking a
Well, I think
fresh
it may
pair
be
of eyes.
worthwhile. I don't know how far along they are, but it appears as though that at least from stakeholders I have in North Carolina, a few things were being rushed on the way out the door to prevent a different posture for the transitioning administration. So I would like that. I'm going to ask for the whole of DOJ, but in your case, the Antitrust Division was actually mentioned, I think, as well. Mr. Blanche, you caught my ear when you said 11 billion terabytes of data. In your opening statement, you said something to the effect that there was some near 11 terabytes of evidence or data. Would you go back through that again really quickly?
Yes, I was talking about everybody in the media and Jack Smith and his prosecutors and the court said that all we were trying to do was delay. Lost in all that was the fact that in just the 2 federal cases by Jack Smith, there was more than 11 terabytes of discovery dropped on us. That's what I meant.
11 terabytes is probably hard for most people to conceive of unless you were a records management geek early in your career, which I was. That 11 terabytes, single-spaced pages. Let's even assume that we print on the front and back. Do you have any idea how many pages of information that represents?
I can't say that I do, Senator.
If it was single-spaced and only printed on one side, it would be 3.6 billion pages. 3.6 billion pages. And people say that the president was slow-rolling. When you get that dropped on the door, it's like, folks, that's just to give you an idea. It's more than would fill this room. And they were trying to expedite it. So I think clearly there seemed like that there were political motivations on the part of the administration. And also lawfare, I heard it referred to as a new term. It actually had its roots back in 1975 and then again in 2001, talking about how lawfare was being used by various countries to manipulate international courts and actually used against democratic nations. We're using it a little bit differently now, but I think there's no question that lawfare went on in the last administration. I want a commitment from you, though, to say that that ends with the end of the Biden administration.
I commit. Absolutely.
And that no matter what the circumstance, there's no place for that. We have the opportunity to end the political physics. For every action, there's an equal and opposite reaction. I want people there prosecuting people of any political stripe, not just one. And you're going to go into a very, very important role. I've got your commitment. There will not even be a whiff of an investigation that appears to have a political motivation to it.
I commit to that.
Thank you. I also heard the January 6 rioters here I call them thugs, the people who injured police officers. I've said it in this committee. I've said it on the Senate floor. I'll say it again. They were thugs who attacked Capitol Police officers who protected every single one of us and every staff, and they all got hurt. I don't have any problem having a difference with the president on the what I consider to be the pardons that shouldn't have occurred for those who committed violence against a police officer. It's a red line for me. Nobody could change my mind, not even my wife. But there's almost an insinuation that you maybe thought it was a good idea or advised on it. So I'm asking you a question. Were you consulted by the president on the pardons, the blanket pardons?
I was not, no.
As a future member of the DOJ, what would be your position on anybody who does violence against police officers in the past or in the future?
They should be prosecuted to the fullest extent of the law.
And do you agree with me that anybody who was convicted or pleaded guilty to violence against a police officer owes a formal written apology to whoever they hurt in the process?
That is something I would think they should certainly consider doing.
Well, I guarantee you, if they come onto this Capitol grounds and I know they're here and they're spiking the football without an apology, I will track them down and make them feel like some of our members did on January the 6th. There's no place for it, no place whatsoever. So I have your commitment in the future that if you were ever advised to provide a pardon for anybody who committed violence against a police officer, what will your recommendation be to the president?
Well, I want to be careful, Senator. I very strongly believe that the power to pardon rests with President Trump, with President Biden, and not with me.
And President Biden, right. But what I'm saying is you're going to be in the world's most prestigious Justice Department that also has the world's gold standard for law enforcement. I believe that with the FBI. We always have to make sure the leaders in that department, either the FBI or the DOJ, always has a law-abiding police officer's back, period, end of story. So I want to ask you, hopefully you will, if you get advice, I just simply want to send the message to whoever advised the president on those January 6th, those who were either pleaded guilty or were convicted in a court of law for injuring a police officer, that's not a fact pattern you will be a part of in the future in making a recommendation if asked.
Violence against law enforcement is never something that should be tolerated.
And I think it's important to hear that because I'm hearing it time and time again. Everybody who's coming before the committee, Ms. Slater, I'm surprised even in antitrust you didn't get the question. But it's a false narrative. Anybody who comes before the DOJ, for a DOJ in any capacity, better answer the same question. Thank you. On behalf of the chair, I'll give it back to the chair.
Thank you for taking over. Senator Coons.
Thank you, Chairman Grassley, and thank you to both of our nominees for your public service, and thank you to your families. I suspect this has been a long day, and it is soon going to come to an end. Mr. Blanche, in particular, thank you for your work in the Southern District of New York and in the Attorney's Office fighting violent crime, and Ms. Slater for your long service at the FTC enforcing our nation's antitrust laws. You've both been nominated to take senior leadership positions in a Department of Justice that I view as being currently in crisis. Career prosecutors have been fired because President Trump didn't like the cases they worked on. Dozens of senior DOJ leaders have been pushed out or reassigned. FBI agents fear mass purges for their work simply because they were assigned to cases related to January 6th, a day, as my colleague, Senator Tillis, was just reminding all of us, when law enforcement officers were brutally attacked, and Attorney General Bondi issued a directive demanding the department go on a witch hunt for past weaponization and calling DOJ attorneys the president's lawyers. As I consider your nominations, I need to know that you will serve with independence and integrity, and I am concerned about some of these recent developments. Ms. Slater, if you would just answer a question I've asked many others, and I understand Mr. Blanche has been asked. Who does the DOJ Antitrust Division work for?
The American people.
Thank you. And do you consider the Assistant Attorney General for Antitrust to be one of the president's lawyers?
No, sir.
Thank you. I think it's important that you both maintain the clarity with which the Attorney General answered this in her confirmation hearing, that you work for the Constitution of the people of the United States, not for any particular president. Mr. Blanche, if you're confirmed and one of the prosecutors comes to you with an airtight case, satisfies burden of proof to take to a jury, but the president asks you to drop that case for reasons unrelated to that investigation, would you?
I mean, Senator,
It's not a hypothetical. We just saw it in the front page this week.
I do believe it's a hypothetical, Senator, and I don't, when you describe a case as, quote, airtight, as a former prosecutor, I don't know what that means.
What was the basis for abandoning the case against the mayor of New York?
I have no idea.
Well,
I
I'll
saw
tell you
this.
that the press is widely reporting, forgive me, the press is widely reporting that was because he pledged to cooperate with deportation, not because there was concern or question about the foundation of it. If you're asked by the White House to initiate a prosecution that you don't believe is legally justified, would you?
I will follow the law, period. There's no other way to answer that.
And if, in your view, the law does not support the prosecution?
It's not just my view, it's law. So my view is one of many at the Department of Justice for sure, and I will tell you that I will follow the law. I don't believe what the media says, just as a matter of practice. So to the extent that the media reports something about Mayor Adams or about other things that are happening,
well,
I'll wait
it's
till
true
I'm
that
there.
his prosecution's been dropped, correct?
Pardon me?
The prosecution against him, the case, has been dropped.
What I was referring to is your statement about why it was dropped based on what the media was reporting. I just don't accept that.
Let me move forward. President Trump signed an executive order on Monday pausing prosecutions of individuals accused of bribing foreign government officials. The law that our president unilaterally decided didn't need to be enforced is the Foreign Corrupt Practices Act. It's been on the books 50 years. In 2024 alone, DOJ and the SEC brought in more than $1 billion in fines and penalties. Total sanctions over the 50 years since it was enacted, over $30 billion. Does the president have the authority under the Constitution to choose which laws passed by Congress will be enforced or which laws will have their enforcement suspended?
I don't believe that that's what the executive order said, Senator. It directed the Attorney General to pause and to take a look at how investigations were being investigated, how prosecutions were going along, and then to report back to make sure that those investigations and prosecutions are being done in a consistent way with the president's agenda. That's not that's not saying don't follow Congress's directives about laws that have been passed. It's saying, Attorney General, take a pause, figure out what we're doing and why we're doing it, and then we're going to do it the right way.
How long do you believe that pause to be?
I don't know, Senator.
I think it's 180 days. And I think it sends a message about enforcement trajectory and priority. But let me move to another issue that I think is also quite current. Last month, President Trump fired more than a dozen inspectors general. This committee, chairs of both parties, have strongly supported whistleblowers, oversight, and inspectors general. Just yesterday, President Trump fired the IG at USAID right after he published a report saying that funding cuts at AID made it more likely that U.S. funds would be diverted to the hands of terrorist groups. In 2022, Congress passed a law, not a suggestion, not a note, not a piece of whimsy, a statute, a law, saying at least 30 days before the removal of any inspector general, the president must provide Congress with, and I quote, a substantive rationale including detailed and case-specific reasons. President Trump provided no notice to Congress and no justification. You're a lawyer. How many days has the president been in office?
Since January 20th.
Which is how many days fewer than 30?
I'm a lawyer, not a math guy. But
I'll just put it
fewer than 30.
It is a matter of mathematical impossibility for the president to have followed the statute and provided us with the required notice, correct?
I don't know.
If he hasn't been president for 30 days, how
Correct.
could he have given us 30 days notice as required by the statute?
He obviously did not.
He obviously did not. Do you think he broke the law by firing these attorneys general, these inspectors general?
As I was saying before, I don't know. I wasn't part of the decisions that he and the White House counsels made in making that decision. I don't want to speak to whether the president broke the law. I just don't know.
But you know that he hasn't been president for 30 days.
Yes.
And I'm telling you that the relevant statute for the removal of any inspector general requires prior notice to Congress with specific reason. Ms. Slater, you're a practicing attorney. Does it seem to you, just on the face of the facts of this instance, that the president broke the law in firing a dozen inspectors general without duly required notice to Congress? The next time we have both of you in front of us, I hope you are familiar. I recognize there are differences of views about exactly what's happened in the past or who made what decisions. But you are in front of us for two of the most important positions in the Department of Justice. And we have, on a bipartisan basis, long stood up for oversight and inspectors general as exactly the people who keep federal agencies on the straight and narrow. And at a moment when there's a whole lot of noise and mess about USAID being corrupt and full of fraud, exactly the person responsible for oversight of AID was just fired yesterday without the required notice or justification to Congress. President Trump broke the law, and I need to hear that you recognize that.
Senator, I'm not going to give you the answer you're looking for then. I refuse to sit here and talk about something that I'm not familiar with and give an answer to you that just because you want it. I'm not going to do that.
Before I call on Senator Blackburn, I'd make a point about the discussion you just had. Number one, the president could abide by the law by putting the person on administrative leave and writing us a letter why he's doing it, and the law would be abided by. The second thing is, if you look at all the corruption that's going on in USAID and all the waste of taxpayers' money, this guy should have been fired. Blackburn. No, before you go, I got one other thing. It's a letter for the record from 70 former Justice Department officials supporting Mr. Blanche's nomination. It reads, in part, Mr. Blanche is a special nominee in that he brings decades of experience both as a prosecutor and defense attorney. As a role of Deputy Attorney General, these experiences have given Mr. Blanche a deep respect for and familiarity with the Department of Justice, rule of law, and the principles of the United States Constitution. Mr. Blanche's experience, professionalism, integrity, and deep expertise make him the perfect candidate for the role. End of quote. I'll put it in the record without objection.
Mr. Chairman.
Yeah.
You correctly argued that the president could have cured this fault by putting them on administrative leave and then giving us the detailed notice.
Yeah.
It's my understanding that is not what happened in this case.
No,
that's why I'm raising it so forcefully.
You're right, it didn't happen. I'm just trying to make the president's job easier. Easy.
And I'm trying to point out that in the case of inspectors general, which we all view as critical and valuable, he did not comply with the law that we wrote.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Ms. Blackburn.
I appreciate the recognition. And welcome to each of you. I appreciate the time that you gave me in my office to talk about issues that are so important to all of us and to our nation. And I appreciate that Senator Coons brought up the weaponization of the DOJ. We have lived through 4 years of this. We have watched the DOJ sit quiet. We have watched our colleagues say not a word when they knew Joe Biden was not making the decisions, when they knew full well things that they were parroting were not accurate, when they knew that there were 2 tiers of justice, 2 tiers of access, 2 tiers of treatment, and they said not a word. And so now they are trying to say, oh my goodness, look at what is happening. What is happening to my colleagues? The American people gave a strong vote and a mandate to President Donald Trump to straighten this mess out and end it, and to get this bureaucracy under control. That is why we have DOJ, that the American people are cheering, because they're tired of this. They are tired of paying for a government that is not responsive to the needs of the American people. So yes, indeed, they watched the DOJ be weaponized, show favor to some and disfavor to others, like parents that were going to a PTA or a school board meeting, or going after Catholics who were pro-life. And they are tired of what the Biden administration gave them. So yes, cleaning up, you better believe it. Is it time to clean house? You better believe it. Is cleaning house going to continue? Absolutely, and it should, because the American people voted for that. They want that. They deserve that. And I am pleased that we will have each of you over at the DOJ. Let's stay with this, Mr. Blanche, on the 2 tiers of justice and the weaponization. So there must be bipartisan concern over that. So tell me, what are some things you can do day one to make certain that we end this 2 tiers of justice? I know it is a priority for General Bondi, and I appreciate that she went to work day one on this. So tell me what you do.
I think the first thing I can do is support what the memos that Attorney General Bondi put out on day one. And the biggest issue that has to stop, and it already has stopped, and it can't ever happen again, is outside influence, especially political outside influence, having any role in the decision that the Department of Justice makes to prosecute a case. It just can't. And if it does, then that is not a just prosecution. Period.
I appreciate that. I know Senator Lee talked with you about violent crime, and we have seen such an uptick. Part of this is related to the gangs that are coming into the country illegally. We had a raid take place in Nashville yesterday. 8 were indicted. 2 were Agua. This was on human trafficking. And beginning to break apart this ring is so very important. But these soft on crime policies have not served our nation well. In Memphis, we have an issue with violent crime and an uptick that is there. We've had a DA Mulroy over there that just will not prosecute these crimes and bring them forward. So we know that in President Trump's first term, there was a decrease in crime, violent crime, 17%. In the first year of Joe Biden's term, 43%. What a hike. The difference was soft on crime policies. And President Trump had a policy in his first term that federal prosecutors, and I'm going to quote, should charge and pursue the most serious, readily provable offenses. And I think that is something that we need to return to. So will the department return to that policy for their leadership for you and General Bondi?
I believe it already has. Yes, Senator.
Well, and the American people are ready to see it. I think that we have a bunch of security moms all across the country, and they are sick and tired of worried about their kids going to an event or trying to go to shopping or going to school and getting carjacked or mugged when they're out at night. Ms. Slater, I want to come to you. I passed legislation when it was in the House before I came over here, the BOTS Act, and it prohibits ticket scalpers from using software to buy high volumes of tickets. And the FTC sat on their hands on this legislation for 4 years, and they have taken only one enforcement action. Now, to a lot of people, they may say, why are you so worried about ticket scalpers? Well, in Nashville, Tennessee, this is a problem. And we want to make certain that fans are able to get these tickets. And we've also got the Main Event Act that Senator Lujan and I have done, which would strengthen the BOTS Act. But I know that you can't get into some specifics because of the ongoing Ticketmaster lawsuit that you are going to inherit. But I'd love for you to talk about some of the issues that you have observed in the ticketing market and steps that can be taken to clean this up.
Senator, thanks for the question. I know it's a hugely important issue for your state, but for all consumers, frankly.
Yes.
And so I totally acknowledge that. As with many pocketbook issues, we've seen a lot of prices go up and not down in some markets. Regarding the BOTS Act, I have the good fortune to have sitting behind me the chairman of the FTC, Andrew Ferguson, and I can absolutely commit to you that I will be working in close partnership with him, not just on this matter, this legislation, but hopefully all cases across the board, because we do have two antitrust agencies, and so coordination is really important. I would also like to visit with your staff to better understand the issues with the BOTS Act as they might see
We
it.
just need enforcement. We have had an FTC that chose not to enforce. Thank you. My time's expired.
Thank you. Senator Padilla.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Colleagues, I'm going to pick up where Senator Coons left off. Not because I wish to be repetitive, but I think the issue is simply just too important. When the President of the United States violates the law, it's important to call it out. And let me underscore, this isn't when the President of the United States strays from historical norms in how he or she does the job. It's not when the president does different than what's been standard practice for prior presidents. I'm talking about when the President of the United States violates the law. Now, on the issue of inspectors general, in case folks watching at home aren't exactly sure what inspector generals do or what purpose they serve, inspectors general serve to hold executive branch agencies accountable. They work to prevent corruption and to make sure that an agency is spending money as it should be by identifying fraud, waste, and abuse, and so much more. And over the years, Congress has taken steps to ensure the independence of inspectors general. As Senator Coons referenced, it was in 2022 when our chairman, Senator Grassley, worked with Senator Peters in a bipartisan fashion to advance the Securing Inspector General Independence Act, which requires a president to give written notice and reasoning of their decision to dismiss or transfer an inspector general at least 30 days prior. It's been established that President Trump hasn't even been in office for 30 days. Now, Mr. Blanche, when you walked into my office, you repeatedly told me that you will always follow the law. Your words, quote, full stop. And you've repeated that same message here today. It's numerically, mathematically impossible for President Trump to have abided by the law in dismissing inspectors general. Yes or no?
My answer remains the same. I'm not going to comment on what the decision made by the White House counsel and President Trump and what he did.
I'm not talking about how they reached their decision. And you clearly know this is not a hypothetical. He didn't give Congress 30 days notice. He violated the law, and I'm disappointed that you're failing to acknowledge that. Let me move on. As Senator Blackburn referenced a minute ago in part of her comments, we're concerned about violence in this country. I'm especially concerned about gun violence in this country. As I hope you've learned, the Department of Justice plays a key role in enforcing federal firearm laws, prosecuting gun trafficking, and defending regulations in court. Mexican President Sheinbaum has stated that President Trump agreed to work on reducing the flow of guns into Mexico as part of the recent deal to delay tariffs for a month. As Deputy Attorney General, how do you plan to uphold that commitment?
I think I agree with what the senator said, that it's extremely important to keep guns out of the hands of folks that cannot have them, especially criminals, especially people in armed robbery, drug dealing, murder.
Specific suggestions, ideas, strategies on how to do that.
I mean, I've said this a couple times, empowering our U.S. attorneys, working with state and local law enforcement to make sure that our crime, that when there's crimes committed that belong in federal court, that they go to federal court. If they belong in state court, they go to state court. But it's been done before. All right, and it can be done again.
So I don't want to put words in your mouth, but am I hearing a commitment to prioritize enforcement against illegal gun sales and trafficking, particularly in light of the rising concern about ghost guns?
Those are all concerns. What I was talking about is violent crime oftentimes used with guns, not always, in our cities. And I think it is extremely important that we focus as much energy as we can on fixing that.
Yeah. And it's not just in cities, by the way. Sadly, I'm not talking about schools.
Agreed.
A lot of school shootings, but in communities, urban, rural, everywhere in between. In my time remaining, a question on a different topic. You know, my colleagues on the other side of the aisle have taken issue with us voicing our concern about President Trump filling the top ranks of the Justice Department with his friends, his allies, and personal attorneys. I can only imagine how they would have reacted if a Democratic president installed his own personal criminal defense attorneys as Attorney General, as Deputy Attorney General, as Principal Associate Deputy Attorney General. I know Senator Blumenthal raised questions about conflicts of interest earlier and how you would serve if your understanding of the law differed from what President Trump desired from you and the Department of Justice. This topic came up when now Attorney General Bondi was with us for her confirmation hearing. And when asked what she would do if a conflict of interest arose with respect to her previous representation of President Trump, and in that hearing, she repeatedly said that she would follow Department of Justice protocol. Now, in case you're not familiar, let me share with you that protocol would be to then have the Deputy Attorney General to step into her place. Except if you're confirmed, that wouldn't be the case because you've served President Trump in a personal capacity as well. And your deputy would also be in that conflict scenario. So can you tell me just how far down the line under President Trump's Department of Justice do we have to go until we have someone who isn't conflicted because they served as the president's personal attorney?
Well, respectfully, Senator, I don't agree with the premise that the same conflicts that apply to me will apply to Attorney General Bondi. I don't believe she was ever his personal attorney. I know she represented him in the past administration, and I agree with what General Bondi said. There are very smart people at the department that will make sure that we are doing the right thing when it comes to recusals, but I don't think it has to go very far down.
Last question. I know my time is just about up. It's a yes or no. Are you aware of any administration history with a similar degree of cascading conflicts of interest, real or perceived?
I don't think there's cascading conflicts of interest in this administration.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Senator Brett, first, just a comment about this business of IGs because I am in the middle of it. I'd just like to remind people that when I complained about the firing of IGs in the previous administration, I didn't get any help from the Democrats on that. I have a letter in with Senator Durbin in a bipartisan way to try to get some answers on this issue and make the point that the law isn't being abided by. Also, before I call on Senator Brett, I'd like to enter into the record a letter from over 100 alumni of the Southern District of New York who worked alongside Mr. Blanche and know him best. The people who signed this letter, quote, cover the gamut of intellectual, political, and legal ideologies, end of quote, and then further quote, Todd's experience, character, intellect, openness to dialogue, and long-standing love of and belief in the mission of DOJ make him eminently qualified to serve as Deputy Attorney General. As a Southern District AUSA and supervisor, Todd embodied those virtues and understood how essential they are to the administration of justice. Without objection, this will be included. No objection? Go ahead, Senator Brett.
Thank you so much, Mr. Chairman. I do want to add to the list of things that Senator Blackburn pointed out that my colleagues on the other side of the aisle failed to point out in the last 4 years. I mean, you had President Biden who said the Supreme Court, this is a quote, tried to block me from relieving student loan, but they didn't stop me. I'm going to keep going. I just relieved student debt for over 5 million Americans after the Supreme Court had said something totally different. Additionally, we can't forget that at the end of his term, he tried to add an amendment to the U.S. Constitution. So in addition to the list she gave, there are much more examples. Look, I want to turn first to Mrs. Slater and to both of you. Congratulations on your nomination and welcome to your family. I know that y'all are very proud to have them in this position and their willingness to serve the country. Sitting up here, I can tell you it's not just you that serves, it's your entire family. So thank you for your willingness to be a part of this. Ms. Slater, look, I really enjoyed our conversation. I want to touch on an issue that we did discuss in our meeting. As a daughter of 2 small business owners, I constantly look at what's happening in our country and think, you know, how does this affect the little guy? How do we make sure that Main Streets can thrive? And even in a place like our defense community or our shipbuilding community,